The sun hovered low, a molten coin slipping behind the crooked roofs of a weather-beaten frontier town. Heat still clung to the dusty boards of Main Street, making them sigh under the weight of years and boots. Horses dozed at hitching posts, tails lazily swatting flies, while a pair of children scuffed marbles through the dirt, giggling in that soft, careless way only the unbruised can manage. Somewhere a dog barked, chased by nothing at all. The town itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Near the livery a man stood, boots planted firm, like twin gravestones. His broad chest rose beneath a sweat-stained shirt, arms thick from decades of breaking horses and bending the land to his will. Gray threaded through his dark hair, beard rough as wire. Eyes sharp as cold iron rested on his daughter with something more dangerous than disdain, a furious shame that curdled in the pit of his gut and came out bitter on his tongue. She was 25, belly swollen beneath a faded calico dress, hands unconsciously cradling the life inside her as if her palms alone could shield it from every sharp thing. Her hair was the color of sun-bleached straw, half fallen from its braid, catching the last light and tangling it into a fragile crown. There was a tremor in her shoulders, yet her spine remained unbent, a tender sapling daring the storm to snap it. People watched. They pretended otherwise, fussing with barrels, tugging at horse harnesses, stooping to adjust laces that needed no fixing. Eyes darted from under brims, from shadowed porches. Whispers caught in dry throats, never finding air. This was a small place. Folks knew each other's sins and secrets, but they also knew fear. It wrapped around them tighter than any law. He stepped forward, boots striking the packed earth with the certainty of a hammer blow. His hand lashed out, catching her arm in a grip that would surely leave bruises the size of thumbprints. "You shamed me," he growled, the words low but hot, like coals under damp moss. "Done gone and dragged our name through every muddy ditch from here to Tucson. Who'll have you now? Who'll have us?" Her lips parted as if to answer, yet only a thin breath escaped. She looked at him, really looked into that hard, weather-creased face, and for a heartbeat something tender flickered there. A memory, perhaps, of small hands clutching his thumb, of lullabies hummed by accident. But it died quick. He was a man made of drought and loss, and whatever soft thing had once lived in him had long since dried up and blown away. Without warning, his boots struck her side. A hollow thud rang out, sharp and obscene against the hush of the evening. She crumpled, hands flying to shield her belly, gasping. Dust rose around her like ghostly applause. A stable boy nearby flinched so hard he nearly dropped the bucket he carried. His freckles stood out bright against pale cheeks. The shopkeeper's wife across the way let out a tiny moan, her husband tugging her back inside by the elbow, shaking his head. "Ain't our business," he muttered. "Ain't ever wise to stand between a man and his blood." The girl lay there, curled protectively over the swell of her unborn child. Her breath came in shallow hiccups, eyes wide and shining. She tasted copper on her tongue. Inside, she repeated silent words like a catechism. "You'll be safe, little one. I swear it. I swear it on every star that ever was." Her heart battered itself against her ribs, fierce and terrified all at once. Above her, he spat into the dirt, disgust curling his lip. "You'll rot where you lie," he told her, voice flat as if discussing spoiled meat. Then he turned, shoulders stiff, and stomped off toward the saloon, where he could drown what scraps of guilt remained in cheap whiskey. The town exhaled, collectively ashamed. The stable boy slipped into the shadows. The shopkeeper's wife peered from behind lace curtains, eyes glistening, mouth working soundlessly. She tried to rise, one hand braced on the dirt, the other clutched around her middle. Pain lanced through her side, white-hot, making her vision swim. Still, she gathered her breath and tried again, refusing to stay broken on the ground. Her face lifted toward the road leading out of town, where the horizon still smoldered with sunset. And that's when the sound came, the slow, deliberate thud of hooves. A rider emerged from a glare, first only a silhouette carved from molten sky. He moved with an unhurried confidence, reins held loose, posture easy. As he drew closer, details gathered around him like brushstrokes, a wide hat shadowing a face bronzed by sun, eyes catching what light remained and reflecting something startlingly clear, almost gentle. A pistol rode his hip, but it was his quiet composure that suggested the deeper threat, or promise. The girl froze, breath caught in her throat. Her heart leapt not out of sudden love, but of raw, startled hope. because in the space between her father's retreating boots and the stranger's slow approach, the world seemed to shift on its axis. The rider halted his horse, boots settling in the dirt with the soft finality of a man who had decided where he stood. His gaze swept over her, lingered on the places she cradled herself. Something unreadable passed across his face, not pity, not exactly. Recognition, perhaps, of hurt that ran deeper than the flesh. He dismounted with a grace that belied his broad shoulders and heavy gear. For a breathless moment, the town held still again, waiting on a knife's edge. And in that hush, filled with dust motes and the last murmurs of dying light, it seemed possible that mercy might still ride these roads. He stood before her like a question only her heart could answer. Dust curled around his boots, stirred by a restless breeze that carried the scent of sage and distant rain. His horse sidled closer, snorting, sensing the tremor in its master's silence. The stranger took in every fragile line of her where she knelt, one hand sunk in the earth as though pleading with it for strength. Slowly he crouched, knees bending with the careful deliberation of a man used to spooking colts or coaxing wounded things from dark places. His hand hovered just above her shoulder, not daring to touch. "Easy now, miss. You're hurt bad?" His voice was low, edged with roughness from trail dust and countless miles, yet it held a tender cadence, like he might be speaking to a frightened doe. She managed only a breathless shake of her head. Pain still bloomed hot across her ribs, and shame curled tighter inside her than any injury. Folk on the boardwalk watched, some clutching shawls or pipe stems, others standing with folded arms. They were waiting to see if violence would answer violence, or if the stranger would simply tip his hat, mutter apologies that weren't his to give, and ride on. Instead, he took off his hat, cradling it against his chest as if entering a church. His eyes were a clear, startling gray like rain-washed slate, and they searched her face with a depth that made her throat close. "Miss," he said again, softer, "you can stand with my help if you've a mind to." It was that quiet offer, lacking any demand or pity, that undid her. Tears she'd kept dammed behind clenched teeth broke free, tracing clean paths down dust-caked cheeks. Still, she nodded. He slipped a careful arm around her back, mindful of where she'd been struck, and braced her weight as she rose. Her knees wavered but did not fold. When she leaned into him, it wasn't from weakness alone. It was the terrible, exquisite relief of knowing someone would not let her fall. His hand was broad, calloused from reins and ropes, yet it steadied her as gently as a prayer. They stood there a moment longer, two figures framed by a sunburned street and the watchful silence of neighbors. Then her father's voice ripped through the hush, rough with liquor and wounded pride. "Get away from my kin, stranger. Ain't your trouble." The older man had stumbled from the saloon's gloom, a bottle still swinging in one hand, eyes bloodshot and wide. The cowboy did not flinch. He shifted, bringing himself slightly between her and the threat, his shoulders easy but anchored. "Reckon it is my trouble now, friend." The way he said it, not loud, not sharp, but with an unflinching calm, made her father hesitate. The bottle wavered in his grip. A tremor ran through the older man's arm, as though somewhere beneath the rotten bitterness, memory stirred of younger days when he might have stood for something finer. But pride was a cruel overseer. With a snarl, he lifted the bottle higher, ready to bring it down in a drunken arc. In that blink of breath, time stretched thin as a hair. Her heart stopped. Then the cowboy's hand snapped up, catching the older man's wrist. It was not violent, merely final, like a door softly closed forever. The bottle slipped from numb fingers and shattered on the ground, amber, liquid bleeding into thirsty dirt. Her father sagged, blinking, mouth working soundlessly. For a heartbeat, he looked not like the towering beast of her nightmares, but merely a tired, broken man. Without another word, he turned and staggered off down the street, shoulders curling inward, swallowed by the twilight. She exhaled a breath she hadn't known she held, knees buckling. The cowboy steadied her again, eyes searching hers. "You're safe now," he murmured. But it wasn't triumph that colored his words, only a gentle promise. She wanted to weep from the fragile bloom of it. Safe. It was such a small word, yet filled up all the hollows in her chest. As the street slowly resumed its rhythm, folks daring to move, to breathe, to pretend they hadn't watched at all, the cowboy led her toward the water trough by the livery. He helped her sit on its edge, then cupped water in his hands for her to sip. Each drop tasted clean, a mercy against cracked lips. "What's your name?" she asked finally, voice raw. He paused, as though weighing whether names even mattered between souls already so laid bare. Then he gave it, simple and unadorned, and it settled into her memory like a stone dropped in a still pond, sending out ripples that would surely reach every corner of her life. She let her fingers drift into the water beside her. In the ripples, she saw not just her reflection, bruised and tear-streaked, but as beside hers, steady, watchful, unexpectedly kind. Above them, the sky deepened to velvet, pricked by the first shy stars. A warm breeze stirred, lifting strands of her hair, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to wonder about tomorrow, not with dread, but with a fragile, shimmering hope. And if the way his hand lingered just above hers was any promise at all, then perhaps tomorrow would dare to be gentle with them both.